shvuyim, captives. Here we go. Judaism is so unique from other religions and from other peoples in terms of having laws for what to do with captives, people who are kidnapped and taken hostage. I don't know that the Italians, they have the mafia, but I don't know that the Italians have in their legal code what to do about hostages, or the Irish, or the Poles. Certainly America, I'm an attorney, not in the US code, not in the state California code. There's not a chapter on hostage release. What are the obligations to free a hostage? Doesn't exist. In Judaism, there's all these laws that we've been learning for 3 weeks for freeing hostages. They've been taking us hostage for a long time. And we've been learning more of the laws. Tonight, we're going into the Talmud. And for these Talmudic passages, they talk about cases where people have been taken hostage. And again, you read American history, the great presidents, the bad presidents, the great battles, the building of great cities. How much is there in American history about the taking of American hostages? It happens. What happened in Iran in, was it 1979 or so, in the Carter years? And Putin always holds one American hostage in order to have bait with which to trade to get some international war criminal released from the United States and sent back to Putin. Or as Biden would say, Zelensky. But the idea that a people have so many stories about hostage taking, it's a horrible thing. Let's go and learn. Again, as always, thank you so much for being here. And now we go to the text. Let's take this down. And let's go to the Gemara. First, we start with the Rambam, with the Mishnah. Mishnah Gittin, Tractate Gittin, Perek Daled, Chapter 4. To refresh your memories, because we weren't here last week because of the 4th of July. Hamocher Avdo, just to refresh your memory where we left off. We had learned, so I'll do this part really quickly. We had learned about, first of all, that it's a mitzvah to free the hostages and to pay ransoms, whatever they ask, as long as it's not so-called too much. And then we learned all about, I won't really go through all of it because it'll take a lot of time, but we learned already. What does it mean as long as it's not too much? The very idea of taking hostage and demanding ransom, all ransom is too much. But the halakha is saying, what can you do? We're Jews. It comes with being a Jew that some Jews will be taken hostage. So there, in every society, in every era, there's like a market price that's a reasonable ransom. And you're allowed to pay a reasonable ransom, just not a truly crazy ransom. And then we said, what about a person who sells himself into slavery or servitude because he can't pay his bills? He's going to be dispossessed from his home. He can't afford food. Not like today where there are Social Security and aid, government aid to people that just can't make it. In those days, everyone was on his own, on her own, and people sold themselves into servitude, not American style mid-19th century or earlier slavery, but a form of servitude where you had to live in a master's house and you had to work. You got food and shelter and maybe a little bit of money in return for being a slave. Not that you would get whipped per se, but you weren't free until you worked off your 6 or so years. Maybe your deal was only 3 or 4 years to work it off. So it's a big mitzvah. Even when a person voluntarily sells him or himself into slavery, it's a big mitzvah to redeem him. That's also pidyon shvuyim. That's also, all the more so if a person cannot find a Jew to whom he can sell himself, so he sells himself to a non-Jew. Hamocher avdo lagoy, A person who sells himself to a non-Jew. So what is this? Is this racism? Are we prejudiced against Goyim? No. The only problem is if you sell yourself to a Jew, especially in those years, all the Jews kept Shabbat, kept kosher. So while you were in servitude to that Jew, you ate kosher and you observed Shabbat. On the other hand, if you sold yourself to a non-Jew, the food was not kosher. The household was not Shabbat. So we did everything we could to get this Jewish servant free and out of that environment. Again, not that the non-Jew did anything wrong. Non-Jew was just saying, I need somebody. This Jew needed some money, and we made a deal. And I'm very nice to him. We understand, but we've got to get the Jew out of there. Also, there are other halakhic issues about God's chosen people being servants to anyone other than God. You know, when you eat a meal with bread, you recite afterwards Birchat HaMazon, the grace after meals. And one of the Harachamans, one of the paragraphs as part of the Birchat HaMazon, grace after meals, is that he should release us. He should sort of release us from the from the yoke and the burden of others, and we should be under his yoke and burden. We willingly and voluntarily at Mount Sinai took on a new form of servitude to God. Harachaman hu yishpor uleinu me'al tzavarenu. May God smash and destroy our yoke, Y-O-K-E, from our necks. And we should let us be his servants and bring us to our land, rather than be stuck in Babylonia or Rome. Well, someone who ends up selling his servant, a Jew, to a non-Jew in Israel, or to someone anywhere outside of Israel, even a Jew, you got to get him free, you got to get him back. And so, Ein Podin et Hashvuyim Yoter al Kadei Demand, Mipnei Tikkun Olam. And you're not supposed to, when you do pay to redeem a slave, pay more than the fair market value because of Tikkun Olam. So again, to refresh your memory from 2 weeks ago, Tikkun Olam is so misused by the woke, by the social justice warriors, the woke. Even Ocasio and Cory Bush and Jamal Bowman, they all talk about Tikkun Olam, like some Jewish George Soros, Bernie Sanders way to justify woke politics. Tikkun Olam means to make a better world, but it doesn't mean those things. It means, for example, you don't pay too much for ransom, because if you do, everyone's going to start getting kidnapped, because the price is going to be so high, the word will get out, kidnap a Jew, and you're set for life. So for Tikkun Olam, to make a better world, you got to make clear we don't pay that much. And there's another opinion that you can't start giving them so much that if you don't give them as much as they want, they'll start torturing the hostages. And likewise, we don't break Jewish hostages loose because of Tikkun Olam. And there are two understandings. We're afraid that if we break them loose, when we could easily just pay a reasonable price, if we break them loose, we may convince people, the Jews try to break them loose rather than pay. So we have to be stricter and tougher on our hostages and torture them more. So to make a better world, as long as it's a reasonable situation, to the degree that any hostage taking is reasonable, you pay. Again, that's different from dealing with Hamas in Gaza, where Israel rightly went into Gaza and forcibly has liberated hostages, because you can't deal with Hamas. It's all about Tikkun Olam. I want to show you what I mean by how far off the rails, Tikkun Olam gets. This came out on Hanukkah. Maybe you recognize one or the other of them. This came out 1 minute on Hanukkah.
Favorite holidays in our big modern family.
Hanukkah.
And why do you love Hanukkah?
You should know Doug Emhoff. I have no idea whether he's ever been circumcised. If he has been, I would be shocked if he was circumcised by a mohel. He had a reform bar mitzvah, whatever that means. All of his wives have been non-Jewish. His daughter Ella is all over the internet raising money for Palestine. And when she was asked how it feels to be a Jew, she told reporters, "I'm not a Jew. Don't ask me that again." Now, she didn't know that actually, because she's the daughter of a non-Jewish mother, she actually got that question right. She isn't a Jew. Her understanding was she is a Jew because her father's a Jew, but she doesn't want to be considered a Jew. So that's Emhoff, or as they say, our second gentleman. Give me a break.
Hanukkah.
So
I love Hanukkah.
Our favorite holiday in our modern family.
Hey everybody, we're here to talk about one of our favorite holidays in our big modern family.
Right? One of our favorite holidays. And I assure you, the other one is not Yom Kippur, and it's not Sukkot, and it's not Shmini Atzeret. It's Christmas, okay? That's another favorite holiday in the modern family. But there she is. There she is, smiling. Any moment she'll be laughing. Hanukkah.
Hanukkah.
And why do you love Hanukkah?
Why do you love Hanukkah?
I love Hanukkah because it really is about the light and bringing light where there has been darkness. And there is so much work to be done in the world to bring light. And it is a celebration of always Tikkun Olam.
There we go, Tikkun Olam, from the Vice President of the United States, after using the word light 3 times in the sentence. Tikkun Olam, right? How did that go? Well, anyway, all of her word salads. So there she is talking Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam, if she really wanted to do Tikkun Olam, she would use her role as the Vice President of the United States to get out the 5 Americans being held hostage in Gaza. That would be Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam is not going to a public event, listening to a Jew-hating Arab Muslim berate the Jews for ethnic cleansing, and then telling her, "I understand your truth. I appreciate your truth." That's not Tikkun Olam. We continue. Let's get back to Judaism without our scholar here in residence. Okay. The Gemaras. Gemara number 1. This is from Gittin, Mem Hey Omid Aleph, folio 45A of Tractate Gittin. Gemara. Well, first of all, let's take a quick look at the Mishnah. Ein po dinin hashvuyin yoter al kadei demehen. When we redeem shavuyin, captives, we're not allowed to pay more than the fair market price. Mipnei tikkun olam, for reasons I've explained. Ve'ein mavrichin et hashvuyim, we don't break captives free forcibly. Mipnei tikkun olam, again for the reasons I explained. And Rab Shimon ben Gamliel omer mipnei takanat hashvuyin, and this rabbi adds, it's actually for the protection of the other prisoners, that if someone does break a Jewish prisoner out, we are afraid that the captors will torture the other prisoners. So, Ibailahu, the Gemara asks, Hi mipnei tikkun olam. The Gemara says, now, we're saying that it makes a better world not to pay too much for hostages and not to break hostages loose. What do we mean it makes a better world? Mishum duchta d'tziburahu? Is it that we're saying that if the price is too high, the community will be too highly strained and stressed to come up with the money, which they would be able to afford if it were less? O dilma mishum delo ligru b'lai sutvei. Or is it that we're afraid that if you break them loose, the other prisoners will face torture? And this is something I discussed. Tashma. So the Gemara says, well, actually, we're going to give you a source, a religious source that argues you actually should pay an overwhelming amount to free a hostage. The Levi bar Darga, there was a man named Levi, that was his first name. Darga was his father. And Levi bar Darga, presumably a righteous man, Parka livrate, in order to free his daughter who had been taken hostage, Betlesar alfe dinrei zahav. He tried with 13,000 gold dinarim, an enormous amount, to free his hostage daughter. So the Gemara is suggesting if this righteous man went way over the rule to pay 13 gold dinars to free his daughter, maybe it is appropriate to overpay. Omer Abaya, so Rabbi Abaya says, Uman le balan de bertzon chachamim avid. How do we know that this man, Levi bar Darga, acted in accordance with the rabbinic ruling? Maybe he didn't ask the rabbis. Still mishalo bertzon chachamim avad. Maybe he did it in kind of defiance against the wishes of the rabbis on grounds that, hey, look, I've got the money and it's my daughter and no one's going to tell me what to do. So we're not judging Levi bar Darga, but the Gemara is saying we can't use that incident as a proof that you're allowed to overpay. And we're not allowed to break out the hostages, also to make a better world. Rambam and Shulchan Arukh. So you may be wondering why are we repeating exactly the same stuff? Because first we learned the Mishnah. This is the Matnitin, the Mishnah, and the Gemara, Gimel Mem, comments and expounds on the Mishnah. So it's re-quoting the Mishnah and adding a little bit of explanation. And in explaining, it's saying, what's the difference when we say you're not allowed to break out the hostages forcefully? What's the difference whether the reason is because tikkun olam, to make a better world, or takanat shvuyin, or to protect hostages? Ika b'nayhu deleka elachad. So the Gemara says the ramification is if there's only one hostage being held, only one Jew in the world being held. If there are 10 Jews in the world being held, you cannot break out the one you want because the other 9 will be tortured. But if there's only one Jew in the world being held hostage, then you are allowed to physically break that Jew out because we're not afraid that other hostages will be tortured because no others are being held. And that's that piece of Gemara. A little more of it. Okay, we'll skip that paragraph. Okay, so this man, Rabbi Nachman, not the Rabbi Nachman of the modern era, but this is a Rabbi Nachman of 2,000 years ago, and his daughters were taken hostage. And Rabbi Elish is talking and teaching something. He's talking, he had gone free eventually, and now he's back in the yeshiva, the academy, the kollel, the academy, and he's teaching Torah to his colleagues since he also had been taken captive. And he tells them they're discussing the laws of freeing captives. Can you imagine a people, even our rabbis, who actually in their academies, everybody knows someone who's been taken hostage? Terrible thing. Yom echad hava yatev gabe ahugavra. Well, one day, Rabbi Elish, while he was in captivity, was sitting with another guy, also in captivity. And that guy understood, like, don't ask me how, but that guy understood birds, birds, when birds were tweeting to each other, he could understand their language. It's said that King Solomon also understood the birds. The Havayoda Belishna Ditzipore. Rabbi Elish was sitting with a man who understood birds. Ata Orva, along came a raven, V'kori le'amarle, and the raven called the other guy. Amarle Maika Amar, and he heard something from the raven. And Rabbi Elish said, what did the raven tell you? Amarle Elish brach. The raven said, Elish, Rabbi Elish, quick, break loose, quick, run away, you can get away. Omar, or v'shakarahu. Rabbi Elish answered, we don't trust ravens. They are liars. We don't trust ravens. They're an unkosher bird, okay? Adahachi atayona. Soon after, a dove, D-O-V-E, came flying in, like the dove, right, with Noah, right, the dove that flies in with peace. A dove came flying into that same prison cell, the Kokarya, and it started chirping. Amarle Maika Amra, and Rav Elish asked the other guy, what is the dove saying? Amarle Elish brach. The dove is saying, for goodness sakes, Elish, get out of here, run away, you can get away. Omar, Knesset Yisrael, Kiona Matila. Rabbi Elish said, now this, the Jewish people are equated to the dove. Dove is a holy bird. It can be offered in sacrifice. It's a kosher bird. It's a bird that represents peace. The Jewish people, Knesset Yisrael, the assembly of God, of Israel, are compared metaphorically to doves. Shma mina mitbrachishli nisa. That tells me, Rabbi Elish said, that a miracle is about to happen for me. God sent a holy bird, a dove, to tell me to go loose. Amar Ezel Echse Benate Rav Nachman. He said, I'm going to run out, Rabbi Elish said, and I'm going to check out. I understand in a nearby building, the daughters of Rav Nachman are being held hostage. Ikayamna Behema Nutaya Adrinhu. And I will see whether they still hold the Jewish faith. You know, you're taken hostage, God forbid, in a non-Jewish world, and they turn people. They torture and they turn people. What's it called? The Stockholm Syndrome? He's going to see if they're still Jewish. They're still one of us. He'll help them. He'll risk himself and he'll get them free. If they've already turned, he's not going to risk himself. Omar. So he said, Neshe, Kumili deitlahu sadran lahadade bevetakise. Women, this is, I don't know if this is true today, but 2,000 years ago in Talmudic times, if a woman wanted to tell a secret to another woman, they shared secrets in the restroom. Go in the restroom to powder their noses, and they would share secrets. Shaminu, so he listened through the door, the daughters of Rav Nachman talking, Ade Guvrin Unahardae Guvrin. And they were saying, we now have two sets of husbands. Each of us has a Jewish husband to whom we were married when we were kidnapped, and each of our captors has forcibly married each of us. So each of us now has two husbands. We unfortunately have seen something like that in Gaza, where they took married Jewish women. God forbid, some of them forced these women, they raped them, they got terrible things. Blame-alahu, lishavuyahi, dilarichak. It's a little challenging to read Aramaic. It's not regular Hebrew. Dili rachakinu mahacha. And they continued and said, we should ask our captive husbands to take us physically away from this prison, so that our husbands, our Jewish husbands, won't know where to find us and free us, evacuate us. In other words, they had turned. They had given up their Judaism, and they now wanted to stay with the others. And as a result, come Iraq. As a result of that, Rav Elish just went on decided not to risk his neck for them, and he went back. Ata ihu v'ahod gavra. And as he went, he encountered a man, and ledide itrachish le nisa, avar b'mabara. And Rav Elish had yet another miracle that he managed by miracle to make it through the water. A ferry came, Ferry. I always spell if I'm concerned that my pronunciation was not clear. V'hahu gavra eshkachu v'katlu. And the other guy, it was quite dangerous and did not have a miracle. So when he tried to go on the ferry, they killed him. Who killed him? His captors were fleeing, were pursuing both Rav Elish and him. They caught up with him and killed him. By miracle, Rav Elish made it free. And so that was that story. Again, in a story of Jews being held hostage. Now we get into even more emotional. I've said it this way, that the latter part of tonight's class, and this is going to finish our unit, not on the Jewish values and ethics of battle and war against our enemies, but this will conclude that aspect, that section of our class on hostages. There's very emotional stuff. Tana Rabbanan. So like, get ready, perhaps, depending on how well I teach it, to even shed a few tears by the end. Tanu Rabbanan, our rabbis taught. Ma'aseh b'Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya, there was an incident that the great Rabbi Yehoshua, Joshua, the son of Chananya, shehalach l'chrach gadol shebaromi, he went to a great city in Rome. Now remember, the Romans took down the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, in the year 70. But Jews continued to live in Eretz Yisrael under Roman occupation until the year 135 and the fall of Beitar under the revolution and rebellion of Bar Kokhba. At that point, the Romans exiled the Jews from Israel, renamed Israel Palestine, which continued until 1948, when Palestine was returned to its original name of Israel. But even during those years of exile, those 2,000 years of exile, there still always remained Jews in Israel, Palestine, because even the Romans had allowed a small Jewish community to continue in Yavne at the request of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, whom they were willing to work with and accommodate. They allowed a grand yeshiva to exist in Yavne, in northern Israel. And because of that, Jews not only are indigenous to Israel, but we never left Israel. When the Arabs and the Muslims started in the 600s with Muhammad, couldn't have been before 600 because he wasn't before 600. And they started their murderous wars and beheading people and occupying territories throughout the Middle East, and eventually came to Palestine, the name that the Romans gave it. Jews already were living there. We never gave up the land. We never gave up our claim anyway. But there were Jews living in Palestine, and the ones that the Romans did not massacre, actually, they went back to Rome. Not to have a good time. They had reasons to go to Rome. It's like nowadays. I mean, ask yourself, nowadays, would you go to Russia? I would not go to Russia. If I had an all-free paid thing on first-class trip on not even Aeroflot, but a real airline, and if it would be like at the Metropole Hotel where a gentleman in Moscow spent a year, I wouldn't go. I would be like this guy, Evan Gershikov, who was writing for the Wall Street Journal. They take him hostage. Or that Brittany Griner, the woke, America-hating women's NBA basketball player. They take hostages. I wouldn't mess around with them. And Putin's not as bad as the Tsar, but I wouldn't mess around with them. And who needs it? If I needed it, I need it. I wouldn't go, frankly, I'll tell you a secret, and I really mean it. I would never go in Germany, and not in my lifetime. I would never set foot in Germany. Not only not on a vacation, But if I'm flying to Israel and the best price is a stopover in Germany rather than when I flew to Israel, I might stop over in London. I would never stop over. I would never put my foot in German soil. Someone once said to me, Dov, you have a real problem. In London, they massacred Jews in the Middle Ages and they exiled all Jews in 1290. In France, they twice exiled Jews in the 1300s. In Spain, there was an Inquisition. In Poland, there was the Khmelnytsky riots. 1497, Portugal, they exiled the Jews. Dov, there's no way you can stop over except for a direct flight with Del Al. Good point. I'd never set foot in these places. But there are Jews that for business reasons and other, they set foot in Russia. They go in, they do their business, they get out. And almost everybody does it. Remember that Schmendrick, poor kid, there were like 3-4 college kids, some idiots that went on some kind of tour, student exchange to North Korea. Remember? And the Pillsbury Doughboy there ended up taking them all hostage. And one of them died. A Jewish kid, it turned out, died in North Korea, remember? Then we start getting emails, we should say Kaddish for the kid, Nebuch. So, but here this rabbi went to Rome, maybe R-O-M-E, not the verb, and he went to maybe for business, maybe to free hostages. I mean, I hate to say it, sadly, and that's exactly what ended up happening. So whatever caused him to go, Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania ended up going to that city in Rome, the Talmud tells us, for the purpose of, he went to that Amurlo, Tinok echad yesh beveit asurim, and he was told by the local community, maybe the Jewish community of Rome, there were Jews living in Rome. After all, Titus had forcibly marched the Jews when he took down the Beit HaMikdash. He forcibly marched the Jews into Rome under the arch that he built, the Arch of Titus. We talked about that in the past. Maybe there were non-Jews, I don't know. But they told this rabbi, you know, there's a Jew, a young Jewish boy, being held hostage, captive. Yafei einayim v'tov ro'i. He's a gorgeous little boy, like maybe age 10, maybe age 12 or 13. He's got beautiful eyes, tov ro'i, gorgeous to look at. Ukavutso tav sturot lo taltalim. And he's got gorgeous hair. Because that's what the locals would concentrate, not on his spirituality, but that he's a gorgeous little boy. He'd make a really good slave to buy. So Rabbi Yoshua, the son of Hananiah, went to the front door of the prison, Amar, and he said, quote, Mi notan l'meshisa Yaakov v'Yisrael levozazim. He said, who gave Jacob for a spoil? Who made it that Jacob should be taken hostage? Jacob meaning the people of Jacob, the sons of Jacob, Jews. Who made it that a Jew should be taken hostage? And Israel to the robber. Who made it that Jacob and Israel are synonymous, just as Palestine and Israel are synonymous? Palestine and Israel are geographical. Jacob and Israel are a people. Who made it that a Jew should be taken captive by robbers? And that happens to be a verse in the book of Isaiah, Perek Mem Bet, chapter 42, verse 24, where Yeshayahu, Isaiah, was talking about, if only Jews, you would listen to this, attend and give heed from now on, and live righteously, you would not suffer. But if you don't, I hate to tell you what God might have in store. After all, who was it that gave Yaakov, the Jews, over to be captive and Israel to plunderers? Surely God, against whom they sinned, in whose ways they would not walk, and whose teaching they would not obey. So Rabbi says, so the rabbi looks at this 13-year-old boy and he asks a question, but he's actually esoterically quoting from the Bible. He's not asking the boy, who took you hostage? Or why have you been taken captive? Rather, he quotes a verse from the Bible with the same meaning. Who gave Jacob to be taken as a spoil? Israel to robbers. And the child answered by reciting the second half of the verse. Did not the Lord, he against whom we have sinned, and in whose ways we would not walk, neither obedient? Where Rabbi had said to him, Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya had said to him, Minatam Shisal Yaakov Yisrael Vozizim, and he says, Halo Hashem zu chatanu lo, v'lo avu b'drachav haloch v'shamu b'torah. Can you imagine an 11-year-old boy sitting captive in Rome, quoting back the second half of a verse from Isaiah? The majority of even Orthodox Jews have never even looked at Isaiah 42. They wouldn't even know it, even those who've studied the Bible. They know the 5 books. They don't know Isaiah. Wow. When Reb Chananya heard that, Rabbi Yoshua said, I am certain that if given the opportunity, this young boy will issue halakhic rulings in Israel. He will become a great rabbi someday. Muftachani bo shemo Ra'ab Yisrael. He one day will be a great rabbi and teacher in Israel. Ha'avodah. He will be someone. I'm taking a vow, like I swear by the holy temple where the holy service is done on Yom Kippur, that I will not abandon this location until I get this kid out of prison and bring him back to Israel. She'eni zaz mikan, I will not leave this spot ad she'eftenu b'chol mamon sheposkin alav, till I redeem him at whatever price they demand of me. Amru lo zaz mishan, and it is said that Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya did not leave until he paid the Romans a fortune to that captor to free that boy. And sure enough, it wasn't long at all before that boy became one of the great rabbis in Jewish history. Umino, and what was that boy's name? Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, one of the greatest ever. And this is the last story, the last Talmudic account in tonight's class. We've finished with this one. And this one, I'll try to teach it the way it should be taught. I apologize for my own inadequacies if you don't have tears when I'm done with this. Omer Rav Yehuda Omer Rav. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Ma'aseh bivno ubevito Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. Huh? That's Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha, that boy who was freed out of the Roman captivity, came to Israel and became one of the greatest rabbis in all of Jewish history. Go figure, when he grew up, his son and daughter were taken captive, and they became hostages. How do you like that? Ma'aseh bivno bevito Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. So Rabbi Yehuda is the remembering and telling of the son and daughter of that rabbi, shenishpu l'shnei adonim, who were taken captive in Rome, and each was purchased by a different lord master. Each was a slave, a Jewish slave in Rome to another Roman master. Liyamim nizgavnu shnehem nizdavgu shnehem b'makom echad. After a certain number of days, it happened to be that the master who owned the Jewish boy, the son of Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha, happened to encounter the other master who owned the daughter of Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. Zeh Omer, now they didn't know that each was holding a slave who, by chance, happened to be brother and sister. Zeh Omer yeshli eved she'en kiyofyo b'chol ha'olam. And they got to talking. Who knows what they were talking about? Soccer games, baseball, I don't know what they talked about. And in the course of talking, they each happened to mention that they own a remarkable slave. Maybe they had many slaves. But one of them said, I have a slave, a young man, who is the most beautiful, handsome man who ever lived in the entire world. V'zeh omer, and the other one said, oh yeah? Yesh li shivcha she'in b'chol ha'olam kulo v'yofya. And I have a female slave, a maidservant. I am telling you, she is the most beautiful woman who ever lived. Huh. They stopped a moment. Amru, bo v'nasiyem zelazeh. They looked at each other. A light bulb flashed, an anachronism I know, and they said, let's couple them. Let's pair them and have the gorgeous guy impregnate the gorgeous woman. Unachalik bavladot. Let them have some children, and let's sell those. My God, how perfect those children will be to be sold at market. And we'll get a fortune, and the two of us can split the proceeds. Hechnisum lecheder. So they got a cell, C-E-L-L. They got a cell, a holding cell, and the Zeh Yoshav Bekeren Zavit Zeh, and the male was brought in, and the female was brought in, and it was nighttime, and there's no electric lighting, and there's no candles, they can't see. The room is black dark, and the male was the son. He wasn't just any Jewish guy. He was the son of Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha. He was a holy Kohen. And so he realized he was being put into that cell to impregnate that woman, an extraordinarily gorgeous woman, but he was a holy Kohen. And so he sat in the corner of that dark room, facing the wall. Bekeren Zavit Zeh. V'zo yashva Bekeren Zavit Zeh. And the woman, that beautiful woman, walks in and understands that she's in a room with the most gorgeous man she'll ever see for the purpose of consorting with him to have babies. But she's the daughter of the great rabbi, and she turns to the corner. And they stay apart. Zelmer, the young man, says to himself, Ani Kohen ben Kohanim Gedolim. I am a Kohen, the son of high Kohanim, high priests of Israel. Esa shivcha, shall I be intimate with a handmaiden? How can I? V'zot omeret ani, Kohenet bat Kohanim. And she started saying to herself, I am a daughter of the greatest of high priests, but Kohanim Gedolim. And Osela Evet, shall I consort with and be intimate with a slave? Ubachu kol halayla. And the two of them wept all night in their corners. They wept all night. Heaven sha'ala amr shachar. When the sun rose, there was a little aperture in the wall or in the ceiling that you could see through. It provided just enough light. Ikirut said they recognized each other. It's my sister, that's my brother. V'naflu zeh al zeh. And they approached each other, hugged each other, and started weeping. V'ga'u b'vchiyah, and they wept and wept so hard, ad sheyatza nishmatan, till their two lives, till their souls left them to heaven. They cried themselves to death. The Alehen Konen Yirmiyah, Al Ela Ani Bochia. And that's the reference the Talmud says in the first chapter of Eicha, the Book of Lamentations, where it says, Alela Ani Bochia, Eni or Damayim, Ki Rachak Mimeni Menachem Meshiv Nafshi, Hayuvanai Shomemim Ki Gaver Oyev. On Tisha B'Av night, when we read Eicha Lamentations, for these do I weep. Not these things, but for these two people do I weep. But the translation is imperfect. For these two do I weep. My eyes flow with tears. Far from me is any comforter who might even revive my spirit. My children are far away, and there is absolutely no one who can comfort me. It's a story of Jewish history when we're not laughing and we're not celebrating, having the grand celebration of Hanukkah at the home of Kamala and the second gentleman. When we're not celebrating, we have had so much sadness, so much real horror. Like right now, how do we feel as Jews? So much to celebrate. Here in America or in Israel, we're free. We're not living under Hitler Germany. We're not living under Inquisition Spain, under Tsarist Russia, Khmelnytsky Poland, Roman Palestine. It's amazing. We can pay our bills. We can pay our rent or mortgage. We can buy food. They actually bring food to your house if you want with Instacart. You could have things brought to you with Amazon. You can hear music. You can stream music. You can watch TV. You can download. You can stream. It's so much fun. You're in the mood for some good laughs, go on YouTube and all kinds of comedians, or just go in person. So much to be happy about. And at the same time, Jews are dying in Gaza in order to live. The central home of the Jewish people is being threatened by Hamas in the south and by Hezbollah in the north. And the world, there's no better proxy for the world than the United Nations. Kishmo Kachilato, that's its name. The nations united. They would destroy us. Even our friends, France and England, never once in history did they ever vote to veto a UN resolution against Israel. Only the United States has done that. And now, in only 1 week's time, as bad as England is, it's now worse. It's just gone from the Conservative Party, which isn't even conservative, to the leftist coalition under Labour. And while they do have a prime minister who is taking off Friday nights to be with his family because his wife is observing Shabbat, even though she's not really Jewish and he's not Jewish, you wait and see what we're going to get from England. Already their new foreign minister has announced he demands an Israeli ceasefire right now and get out of Gaza. That's our friend England. And the same thing in France. As bad as it's been under Macron, now there's going to be a coalition with the communists and the socialists, and they're even worse than before. Other than the United States, we have two countries that come to mind. We have that guy Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, and we have that guy Javier Milei in Argentina, who went to visit the Lubavitcher Rebbe's kever and ohel on the day he became the leader of Argentina, even though he's not Jewish. He's a lover of Jews, but other than Argentina and the Netherlands, all we have is America. It's always been a struggle. And what will happen up north with Hezbollah and with Syria and Iran? We believe in the eternity of the Jewish people. Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. And we believe God never would have created a third Jewish commonwealth if that were not to be eternal. So we have that, but it's always been hard. And tonight's class reminds us how it's not only now, we have always faced hostage taking. It's part of the Jewish experience, and therefore it's part of our national peoplehood to get them out. Not at all costs, but to get them out. And even to risk lives as we did in Entebbe and as Israel's doing now. I conclude with 3 minutes of a song. And with this, we conclude tonight. I've played this on our Sunday class often. This is a clip of the theme song, the movie theme song from the Entebbe movie. Israel had an Entebbe movie called Mivtza Yonatan, Operation Jonathan, named for the brother of Prime Minister Netanyahu, Yoni Netanyahu, the only one who died during the Entebbe rescue. He was the commander of the unit. And the Israeli way is the commander is the one who leads everybody, not the one who sits behind in an office. And he was killed during the otherwise extraordinary miracle raid. And they made a movie, and the theme song of that movie has won every imaginable award in Israel, and is one of the most important songs to this day in Israel. They even took that melody and applied it to it became the prayer. They changed the words for the prayer for the Israeli army, the Israeli armed forces. So this was played on Israeli Channel 14 News the day after the news came out that Israel a few weeks ago had freed the 14. And with that, I'll close tonight. Thank you as always for being here. It means the world to me to have all of us here. And so that I can have people to share with and learn with. Here we go. I think I just realized I have to optimize, which means we're going to get some of those annoying black squares on the box, but it's worth it. Here we go.
מהירה בעזרת השם של עוד 120 החטופים שאנחנו מתפללים.
We just released this again is a few weeks ago. Our army, our armed forces just released 4 prisoners, 4 captives, and there may be as many as 120 more. Unfortunately, we know there are fewer, and may it be God's will that they all be freed quickly.
יום יום לשבתם, אבל
We pray every single day for their return.
תראה עכשיו כמה רגעים של נחת.
But let's allow ourselves a few minutes of nachas, of joy, emotional joy over what just happened.
החילוץ שלהם, עוד כמה רגעים יחד עם המשפחות. אל ארץ אל שדותיה, אל הכרמל.
Just that you know, the clips are clips of the hostage rescue. However, the words are the lyrics from the movie theme. No more interruptions.
שמע, קודם כל אני אגיד לך שזה...
Now, as we close now, I just want to tell you, many of you know this. One of the hostages, her mother was dying of the same thing that took my beloved Ellen, Zichron Livracha, of glioblastoma, the cancer in the brain. And the mother was dying, and it's a fatal disease. It is what it is. And one of the hostages, the mother was saying, if only I could see my daughter once again. I'm a tough guy, but I get emotional. And that girl was one of the 4 who was released, and she got to hug her mother, and her mother still had it. She still had the energy, and they hugged and they cried. And the mother died about 2 weeks later, having hugged and reunited with her daughter. So that's kind of a metaphor for Jewish life. Thanks so much for being here. Our next class, God willing, is on Sunday, and then Tuesday and Thursday, yada, yada. Thanks for being here again. Bye-bye.